"You stole my house." That was the first thing I said to her. No greeting, no handshake, just those 4 words cutting through the air of the clubhouse like a blade. Karen Mallister froze mid-sentence, her wine glass halfway to her lips, pearls catching the fluorescent light. Around us, a few HOA board members pretended to look busy, tapping at papers that did not matter. She tilted her head, smirked, and replied, "Excuse me?" As if I had accused her of stealing a parking spot instead of the land my mother raised me on. I did not blink. 1428 Maple Trail. White cottage, blue shutters, porch swing. Karen's eyes flicked to a folder on the table before she smiled, that thin corporate smile that people wear when they have already decided you do not matter. "Ah, that lot," she said. It went unclaimed. "Delinquent taxes. Transferred to the association 6 months ago." She said it like reading a weather report. I told her I had been deployed in Afghanistan, that my taxes were covered under federal exemption. She interrupted, swirling her wine. "Maybe," she said. "You should have thought of that before abandoning your responsibilities." The silence that followed was so sharp it whistled in my ears. I had heard mortars fall quieter. My hand clenched around the edge of the table, and every instinct in me screamed to stand down, not because she did not deserve to be called out, but because I was still in uniform. She offered me a replacement lot, near the dumpsters. "We can work something out, soldier," she added, as if she were doing me a favor. That word, soldier, left her mouth like a sneer, not a title. Hours earlier, I had stepped out of a taxi expecting home. 11 months gone, boots still heavy with Afghan dust, heart full of the idea of surprising Mom, sleeping in my own bed. Instead, I found a dog park, 3 golden retrievers chasing a frisbee across what used to be my front yard, a woman in yoga pants scolding her poodle for sniffing my duffel bag. For a full minute, I thought I had the wrong address, until I saw it. The oak tree by the driveway, the one I carved my initials into before deployment. Still there, still scarred. Everything else was gone. A sign read, "Willow Ridge Community Park, sponsored by the Homeowners Association." Below it, a plaque, dedicated to peaceful living and communal joy. My pulse hammered louder than any firefight. When I asked a passing couple what happened to the house, the man shrugged. "Some government guy did not pay his taxes," he said, sipping a smoothie. "HOA repurposed the lot. They walked off." I stood there, the so-called government guy, staring at a frisbee cutting through the air where my living room once stood. Disbelief comes first, then the numbness. Not anger, not grief, just a hollow question echoing inside your ribs. How is this even possible? I had survived rockets and ambushes, led recon patrols through hell, pulled civilians out of burning buildings. Yet here, in suburban America, I was defenseless against paperwork. The enemy wore loafers and sunglasses and chaired neighborhood meetings. City Hall was a carousel of confusion. Clerks shuffled printouts, shrugged, told me to talk to the HOA. Every document said the same lie: property seized due to tax delinquency. I filed that exemption before I deployed. Somewhere between the ink and the courthouse, someone had rewritten reality, and that someone was now standing in front of me in pearls, lecturing me about responsibility. I left the clubhouse before I said something that would land me in handcuffs. Outside, the air was heavy with sprinkler mist and false serenity. Kids rode bikes past private property signs that had replaced my mailbox. I sat in my truck for a long time, staring at the reflection of the tree in the windshield. My body was home, but my soul was still deployed. The war had not ended. It had just changed uniforms. That night, I checked into a motel on the edge of town. Neon buzzed through the curtains. I stared at the wall until dawn painted it gray. I thought of Mom's rocking chair, of late summer evenings painting the porch, of the last phone call before I left. That land was not dirt, it was memory. They had not just taken property, they had erased a history. When the sun came up, I knew sleep was useless. I needed answers. Luis Ortega owed me a favor. Back in Kandahar, I had pulled him from a burning convoy. Now he worked cyber investigations for a federal agency, the kind of guy who could find skeletons in a database. I told him everything. Within hours, he was sending files, forged signatures, retroactive board minutes, shell corporations registered under Karen's cousin. It was a web-tight, deliberate, greedy. The HOA had created a fake trail of ownership to make it look like I abandoned the property. Luis forwarded me an email chain where board members joked about flipping that soldier's dirt and keeping the neighborhood HOA pure. Another message from Karen read, "He probably will not come back. If he does, he can salute and walk away." I printed that one, pinned it to the motel wall beside a photo of my old house. My jaw ached from clenching. I had faced insurgents who respected the Geneva Convention more than this woman respected federal law. Court would take years, and she would drown it in appeals. I did not want court. I wanted justice loud enough to echo through her perfect suburb. That is when I remembered Colonel Trent. Before deployment ended, he had told us, "If you ever need anything back home, call me direct." I never thought I would cash that chip. But betrayal on home soil feels different. It rots slower, cuts deeper. When he answered, I told him everything. The forged papers, the insult, the fraud. He did not laugh. "Send me coordinates," he said, and a list of structures involved. Then, after a pause, "You want this quiet or dramatic?" I took a breath that tasted like iron and said, "Dramatic." The plan started forming before I hung up. Not revenge, revelation. If the HOA wanted to play bureaucracy, I would bring them a bureaucracy they could not outvote, the U.S. Army. Operation Civic Shield. Trent said it could pass as a federal training exercise, urban readiness, disaster reclamation, civil engineering under live conditions. My contested property would serve as the central zone. Entirely legal. Deliciously poetic. For the next 3 weeks, Luis and I built the case like soldiers laying mines. Every permit, every zoning discrepancy, every illegal fence extension, satellite overlays showed entire HOA expansions encroaching on wetlands and municipal right-of-way. The clubhouse? Half a foot over the legal boundary. The pool? Built on miszoned terrain. The dog park, my dog park, on stolen land. It was not an error, it was empire building disguised as community service. Judge Winslow, the JAG turned state judge who had once signed our deployment paperwork, looked at our file and muttered, "If this goes public, someone is going to prison." But she warned me, they would drag it out. Unless the land came under federal review, she could not fast-track it. I told her that was already in motion. She raised an eyebrow, half smile, half warning. "You always did think like a strategist, Sergeant." The week before the operation, I spent hours alone with blueprints spread across the motel desk. Drone images, satellite grids, a layout of every inch of Willow Ridge. Luis tapped in from DC, feeding me updates, troop manifests, legal clearances, zoning overlays. The military moved faster than paperwork ever could. By Friday, Operation Civic Shield had full authorization. Karen had no idea what was coming. She probably spent that weekend drafting new HOA bylaws about mailbox height or holiday wreath colors. Meanwhile, I was reviewing convoy routes and helicopter paths. It was meticulous, lawful, and beautifully ironic. The night before launch, I sat outside the motel under a buzzing streetlight, staring at a grainy photo of my house, the porch, the swing, Mom's chair. I promised her out loud, I am bringing it back. At dawn the next morning, the sky was clear, the kind of quiet blue that tricks you into thinking peace is permanent. Across town, residents of Willow Ridge woke to the rumble of diesel engines. Humvees rolled past manicured lawns. Soldiers unloaded gear. Helicopters circled once, then again. Karen stepped outside in a silk robe, holding a mug that read, Queen Bee of the Ridge. Her jaw dropped. She marched across the lawn, shouting about rights and sovereignty, until a young officer handed her a sealed packet stamped Federal Assessment, Joint Operations Protocol. Her hands trembled as she scanned the pages, the color draining from her face. She turned toward me. I had just arrived, stepping from an unmarked SUV, and hissed, "You!" I nodded. "Yes, ma'am. The soldier you thought would not come back." By noon, soldiers had staked out perimeters, erected tents, and converted the clubhouse into a command post. Karen's precious wine fridge now held bottled water and MREs. Residents gathered in bathrobes and confusion while cameras began to appear at the subdivision gates. I stood by the oak tree, my tree, and watched order reclaim chaos. This was only the beginning. The operation would expose everything: the fraud, the arrogance, the way small power masquerades as authority. But in that moment, watching the flag rise over the temporary base where my living room once stood, I realized something simple. I had not lost my home. I had just been delayed in taking it back. The first convoy rolled into Willow Ridge just after sunrise, engines low and steady like thunder trying to be polite. Tires crushed gravel, soldiers moved with quiet efficiency, and the hum of radios replaced the morning birds. Curtains fluttered as residents peeked out in bathrobes, clutching mugs in confusion. To them, it looked like an invasion. To me, it looked like justice wearing camouflage. Karen Mallister stepped outside in a silk robe and pearls, holding her infamous Queen Bee of the Ridge mug as if it granted diplomatic immunity. When she saw the Humvees parked on her street, her mouth fell open. "What is this?" she demanded, storming down the walkway as soldiers unloaded crates labeled "Federal Property." Her voice cut through the crisp morning air. "Who authorized this? This is private property!" A lieutenant, unshaken, handed her a sealed packet. "Ma'am, this area has been designated for a temporary federal training operation under Joint Operations Protocol." She tore the envelope open, scanning lines she clearly did not understand. Words like fraudulent zoning, federal investigation, temporary occupation authority. Her face cycled through disbelief, fury, and something new, fear. "You cannot just take over a neighborhood!" she shrieked. The lieutenant adjusted his cap. "Ma'am, you already did!" By the time I arrived, the lawn looked like a scene from a surreal movie, suburbia colliding with military precision. Soldiers hammered stakes into the ground, where HOA banners once fluttered. The old community fountain was roped off as a decontamination station. A Black Hawk circled once, its shadow slicing across Karen's pristine hydrangeas. She spotted me stepping from the SUV and stormed over, her slippers sliding on the wet grass. "You did this!" she hissed. "You brought the government into my neighborhood!" I met her glare, calm and steady. "Funny," I said. "That is exactly what you did when you forged my deed." Her face flushed crimson. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "This is harassment! I will call the mayor!" I smiled. Already spoke to him. He signed the authorization himself. The color drained from her cheeks. Behind us, soldiers erected tents in the park that used to be my front yard. The irony was not lost on anyone. Neighbors whispered from porches, trying to piece together how their queen lost her crown overnight. A few stepped closer to ask questions, but the officers redirected them with calm efficiency. The official line was simple: Federal Review, temporary training, stay indoors for safety. Inside the newly seized clubhouse, military engineers replaced HOA posters with tactical maps. Karen's portrait, the one labeled Founding Mother, now leaned against a trash bin, its glass cracked. Radio chatter filled the hall where board meetings once debated mailbox colors. It was poetic symmetry, the same walls that birthed injustice now hosting the machinery of accountability. Karen tried to lock herself inside, screaming that it was private property. Two soldiers opened the door using keys provided by the county records office. "Apparently, she never paid for her own locks," one murmured. Within hours, the wine fridge was cleared out and filled with water bottles and MREs. Her luxury chairs became seating for command staff. When a young officer politely informed her that her living room would serve as a secondary briefing site, she nearly fainted. Outside, chaos bloomed. Residents wandered between curiosity and panic, waving cell phones, calling news stations, demanding answers. One man shouted, "You cannot just occupy us!" Another muttered, "Maybe we should have read the fine print." It did not take long for reporters to show up, local first, then national. Satellite vans lined the curb. A camera zoomed in on Karen's trembling hands as she attempted a press conference in her driveway, voice quivering, script collapsing. "This is government overreach," she declared. "The HOA acted in good faith." A reporter raised an eyebrow. Did that good faith include bulldozing a veteran's home while he was deployed? Her mouth opened, but no words came. The clip went live within minutes. By evening, social media burned like wildfire. Hashtags exploded. Justice for Sergeant Cole, Bye Bye Karen, HOA of Shame. A side-by-side image, my house before deployment and the dog park after, became the face of the scandal. Within hours, every news outlet carried the story of the HOA that stole a soldier's home. Karen's empire of intimidation cracked under the weight of exposure. Luis kept feeding me intel from Washington. He traced 5 more homes tied to the same fraud pattern: fake transfers, shell companies, and zoning manipulations. "It is bigger than just your lot," he said. "This is systemic theft." His tone was half disbelief, half grim satisfaction. The Department of Defense Legal Division began drafting statements. The IRS flagged Karen's cousin, the shell operator, for tax evasion. Every thread we pulled led to another hidden crime. That night, the military erected a massive red and white sign at the subdivision entrance: Federal Urban Training Zone, Restricted Access. Residents fumed, but there was nothing they could do. Karen's little monarchy had become occupied territory. The woman who once fined neighbors for unapproved flower colors now had Humvees parked beside her mailbox. I walked through the perimeter under floodlights, boots crunching gravel. Soldiers marked the original footprint of my house with survey flags. Someone handed me a printout of the structural outline, the dimensions of my porch, the swing, even the place where Mom's rocking chair had sat. I stood there for a long time, breathing in the night air thick with diesel and vindication. I did not feel vengeance. I felt balance. As dawn broke on day 2, Willow Ridge no longer resembled a suburb. It looked like a small base, organized, methodical, alive with purpose. Drones buzzed overhead, documenting every inch of contested land. Soldiers moved in formations past bewildered homeowners. The clubhouse, formerly Karen's throne room, now buzzed with radios and field computers. I sat across from a legal liaison reviewing the evidence: my exemption forms, the HOA's fake records, the land transfer trail. "This is not a dispute," the liaison said quietly. "It is organized fraud." Karen, desperate to salvage control, dragged a folding table to the lawn and announced an emergency neighborhood meeting. She shouted into a megaphone, voice trembling, trying to rally support. "This is our community! They cannot take it from us!" But most of the residents stood at a distance, arms crossed, faces hardened. They were not defending her anymore. They were watching her fall. A uniformed officer stepped from the clubhouse and placed an envelope on the table in front of her. "Federal Land Review Board, Notice of Audit," he said. She tore it open, lips trembling as she read the words. "Due to documented fraud, misuse of authority, and obstruction of military rights, Willow Ridge HOA is under legal audit. All HOA operations are suspended effective immediately." Her mouth opened, but the sound that came out was not a speech, it was a whimper. Then, from the crowd, a slow clap began. A few neighbors who had once feared her stepped forward, clapping louder, cheering. The rest joined in until the noise drowned out her protests. Karen's power evaporated in applause. By sunset, the media swarmed like locusts. Drones filmed soldiers dismantling illegal fences, marking zoning boundaries with bright orange tape. Reporters interviewed neighbors who had suffered under Karen's fines and threats. One woman tearfully described how she had been charged hundreds for planting non-uniform flowers. Another showed photos of the HOA bulldozing my home while I was overseas. Each story stacked like ammunition in the court of public opinion. The transformation of the neighborhood was both literal and symbolic. The fountain where Karen hosted garden parties now displayed a U.S. flag. The once sterile lawns bore tire marks and footprints. A new kind of order was taking shape, one built not on fear, but on fairness enforced by truth. Late that night, I stood again where my living room used to be. The ground was flattened, flags marking corners of memory. The soldiers had cleared the space with care, leaving it ready for what came next. For the first time in years, I was not looking at ruins. I was looking at a foundation waiting to rise again. Karen's world had been built on intimidation, and intimidation only works when people believe in it. That illusion shattered under floodlights and camera lenses. The people she had silenced now spoke freely, telling reporters, investigators, anyone who would listen about her bullying, her fines, her fake votes. The facade of communal joy had collapsed, revealing greed underneath. When Judge Winslow arrived to inspect the site, she took one look at the seized records and said, "They are finished." She signed the order placing Willow Ridge under temporary federal administration until the investigation concluded. Karen tried to interrupt, waving some outdated charter bylaws. Winslow did not even glance up. "You forged federal exemptions. You mocked the law that protects those who serve it. Sit down, Mrs. Mallister." The cameras caught every word. By morning, Karen's attorney had withdrawn representation. Her cousin, the shell company front, had turned himself in. The contractor who bulldozed my home confessed to receiving cash payments off the books. Every domino fell exactly as planned, one signature at a time. When the dust settled, residents approached me not with fear, but with shame-tinged gratitude. An older man said, "We should have spoken up sooner." I told him, "You are speaking up now. That is what counts." Small as it was, that exchange felt like victory. That evening, the last light caught the tops of the camo tents, turning them gold. A soldier handed me a folded flag that had flown over the command post that day. "Sir," he said quietly, "thought you might want this for when you rebuild." I took it, the fabric warm from the sun, and felt something settle inside me, a peace that did not depend on silence. For the first time since coming home, I was not outnumbered. I was not a soldier fighting ghosts in paperwork. I was a man reclaiming the ground beneath his feet. The HOA had written me off as collateral damage, a name erased from records. But they had forgotten something crucial. Soldiers do not vanish. We regroup. As I left the site that night, the lights of Willow Ridge glowed behind me, no longer the fake serenity of control, but the uneasy calm of awakening. Tomorrow, investigations would continue, headlines would multiply, and Karen's downfall would echo far beyond this neighborhood. But in that quiet drive under the Texas stars, I smiled for the first time in months. The war was shifting, and this time, I was winning it on my terms. The war did not end that morning. It simply changed shape. When the sun came up, Willow Ridge looked like a suburb learning to breathe again. Soldiers packed their gear, trucks idled near the curb, and neighbors stood in clusters, whispering through the mist. The air carried that uneasy quiet you hear after a storm when everyone wonders what survived. News vans still lined the main road, satellites glinting in the pale light. And at the center of it all, Karen Mallister sat on her porch in silence, a queen dethroned in her own kingdom of fences. By mid-morning, the headlines had grown teeth. HOA president under federal investigation, soldier returns to find his home replaced by dog park. Operation Civic Shield exposes suburban corruption. The story traveled fast, faster than even Luis expected. Footage of Karen's meltdown, her shouting at soldiers, waving her mug, trying to block the convoy, looped on every major network. She became a symbol overnight, not of authority, but of arrogance. And me? Somehow I became the opposite. The soldier who did not fight with bullets, but with truth. Luis called that afternoon, his voice alive with vindication. "You are not going to believe this," he said. "We have got a video." He sent me a file, grainy footage from an HOA board meeting that Karen thought was private. In it, she laughed about bulldozing that soldier's ugly cottage, mocked military families, and bragged about how easy it was to manipulate land records. "They are too disciplined to fight back," she said, sipping wine. "Once they are gone, they stay gone." The clip was time-stamped 6 months after my deployment. Proof. Not just of theft, but of intent. I did not hesitate. I forwarded the video to every news contact we had. No caption, no statement, just the recording. By the time the 5 o'clock broadcasts rolled out, the internet had a new rallying cry. "I am home now." That is all it took. The phrase spread like wildfire. Veterans reposted it. News anchors quoted it. Even politicians weighed in. For the first time, the HOA's perfect facade cracked wide open, and the public could see what hid beneath: greed, cowardice, and entitlement. By evening, Karen's phone calls went unanswered. Her lawyer dropped her. Her cousin, the shell company operator, was subpoenaed and flipped to save himself. He handed over records that proved everything Luis had uncovered: forged signatures, illegal transfers, cash payments disguised as maintenance reimbursements. The contractor who bulldozed my house cooperated too, admitting he had been paid off the books under HOA direction. Karen's empire was collapsing from the inside out. I drove back to Willow Ridge that night and parked outside the fence line. Floodlights still burned around the clubhouse, now a makeshift command post for federal investigators. From a distance, it looked like a fallen fortress. The once pristine lawns were torn by tire tracks, and the founding mother portrait had been taken down. I walked past residents gathered in small circles, their voices hushed, uncertain. A few nodded at me, not with pity, but with respect. They knew. They had seen it unravel. When I reached the spot where my home used to stand, I stopped. Survey flags marked the perimeter, each one glowing faintly in the light. The ground was level now, cleared of debris and deceit. For the first time in almost a year, it felt like solid ground under my boots. I closed my eyes, hearing echoes, Mom's laughter on the porch, the creak of the swing, the smell of summer rain hitting fresh paint. It was not just land. It was memory made visible. Judge Winslow arrived the next morning, her black sedan rolling past the checkpoint. She stepped out with her usual precision, clipboard in one hand, authority in the other. "Sergeant," she greeted. "You did quite the number here." I handed her the compiled evidence Luis and I had built, the emails, transfers, the recorded meeting. She flipped through it quietly, then said, "It is airtight. The Federal Review will finalize dissolution of the HOA by the end of the week." She paused, looking toward Karen's house. "You understand, she will likely face time. Fraud, conspiracy, obstruction. There is no walking away from this." "I am not here for prison time," I said. "I just want the truth to stick." Winslow nodded. "It already has." By noon, federal notices were taped to every door in Willow Ridge. The HOA was officially suspended. Residents gathered in driveways, reading the papers in disbelief. Some cheered, some cried. Others just stood there, realizing that the small tyranny ruling their lives had finally evaporated. Karen's home was marked for audit, her accounts frozen, her title stripped. She tried to hold another press conference, alone, on her porch, but the reporters were not there for her anymore. They were across the street, interviewing the people she had silenced for years. A woman in her 60s told the cameras how Karen fined her $300 for hanging wind chimes. Another man said he had been forced to repaint his fence 3 times because it was the wrong shade of beige. Each story painted a picture of control disguised as community. And in the middle of it all stood the truth, that my house had been the first domino to fall. By evening, federal trucks rolled in again, this time not with soldiers, but with investigators carrying boxes. They filled them with HOA records, shredded documents, and falsified minutes. I watched from the curb as they sealed everything, labeling it evidence. Karen stood nearby, pale and shaking, escorted by 2 officers. She still wore pearls, but they looked heavier now, like chains she had forged herself. That night, I did not stay in the motel. I stayed on the land. I pitched a small tent where my bedroom used to be, lit a camp lantern, and sat in the dirt. The stars were bright, indifferent to all of it, but for the first time, I was not angry, just grounded. I fell asleep to the sound of wind through the oak tree I had carved my initials into as a kid. When I woke, dew sparkled on the grass like forgiveness. Over the next week, everything changed. Donations poured in from across the country, veterans groups, strangers, families who had read the story and wanted to help rebuild. The Veterans Association contacted me directly. "We would like to fund your reconstruction," they said. "Not charity, symbolism." They called it Operation Homecoming. I did not know whether to laugh or cry. Construction began quietly. Engineers from the military's civil division offered to help draft the new blueprints using the original dimensions. They even included Mom's porch swing. When I saw it on the plans, my throat tightened. "Let us build it right here," I told them, pointing to the exact spot the sun hit in late afternoon. That is where she liked to sit. The community, once silent under Karen's rule, began to wake up. People brought food, offered tools, volunteered labor. One man, someone who had voted for Karen years ago, showed up with a hammer and said, "Figured it is about time I built something honest." Even kids helped, painting small signs that read, "Welcome home, Sergeant." It was not just my house being rebuilt. It was the idea of what a neighborhood was supposed to be. Karen, meanwhile, disappeared from sight. Her car was gone by the second week. The media said she left town in the middle of the night, escorted by marshals. The last image anyone saw was her house, once immaculate, now boarded up. Property under federal review stamped across the door. Her reign ended not with applause, but with silence. When the house frame finally stood again, bare wood against blue sky, I picked up a hammer. A contractor handed me the first nail. "Your turn," he said. The sound of that single strike echoed through the valley. Clean, final, beginning. Every hit after that felt like reclaiming something that had been stolen molecule by molecule. When the porch swing went up, I sat in it for a long time, the chain creaking softly. The air smelled of pine and redemption. Weeks passed. The federal investigation concluded. The HOA was dissolved permanently. The land titles were corrected, and restitution funds were distributed to victims of Karen's fraud. Some neighbors cried when they received checks. Others refused the money, saying the closure was enough. The new civic association that replaced the HOA voted unanimously to include a clause protecting veterans and active duty families from property actions without federal oversight. They named it the Ramirez Clause. I did not ask for that name, but it stuck. Reporters came back one last time, hoping for an ending quote. I told them there was not one. "You do not win wars like this," I said. "You just make sure the next battle does not happen." They nodded, maybe expecting something grander. But truth does not need fireworks. On the last day of construction, Luis flew in from D.C. He stood beside me on the porch, looking out over the neighborhood. "You realize you turned a scandal into a precedent, right?" he said. "HOAs everywhere are lawyering up after this." I laughed. "Good. Let them check their paperwork." He smiled, shaking his head. "You really are dramatic." "Maybe," I said. But it worked. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I sat on the porch swing. The flag we had raised fluttered in the breeze. Kids played in yards again, neighbors waved. No rules, no fines, no fear. Just the sound of a place finally free from its own arrogance. I thought about Mom, about her chair, her voice, about the promise I made the night before deployment, to come home and keep it standing. It took everything I had, but I kept it. I looked down at my hands, scarred, steady, tired, and realized the truth. They had tried to bury me under paperwork and lies, but they forgot. I was trained to dig trenches and reclaim ground. This was not revenge. It was restoration, the kind that cannot be undone. As the sky turned gold, I whispered, "I am home." And this time, it was not a statement. It was a victory.